All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Vincent Molden, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Constituent Services, and I'll be moderating tonight's webinar. Thank you for joining us this evening for tonight's Engage Arundel webinar, which is on Plan 2040 Progress Report, Shaping the Future of Anne Arundel County. These webinars are designed to collaborate between community and county government, and this initiative is aimed to provide county residents with the knowledge and tools to create sustainable and thriving neighborhoods using county resources. So, before we begin, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules just to ensure that everything goes smoothly. Please note that today's webinar is going to be recorded. So if you need to step away or if you would like to review the content later, we'll be sending out a recording after the event, so no worries there. Anything that will be shared on the screen will be shared with you afterwards as well. Any presentations. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. And although most of the questions that will be asked tonight will be pulled from the registration form that you use to come into to register for tonight's webinar, we do encourage you to use the Q&A function because we will pull a couple of questions. So thank you once again for joining us, and I would like to introduce our first presenter, Michael Stringer, who will provide us with a brief overview of the 2024 Plan 2040 Annual Progress Report, which I know you all read the entire thing before you came into tonight's webinar. So, Michael, take it away.
Thank you very much, Vincent. And thank you all for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to follow up on this. Let me share screen here. We'll walk through some slides to help describe what progress has been made in Plan 2040. Okay. This is the cover on our title slide here of Plan 2040. It is the county's general development plan. So that's our countywide policy document for land use planning. It looks out over the next 20 years. It includes a vision, goals, policies, and strategies for land use and land use related topics like water resources, transportation, housing, economic development. The topics are organized into 4 major chapters: the natural environment, built environment, healthy communities, and healthy economy. Plan 2040 was adopted over about 4 years through a process that involved technical analysis and extensive community engagement, including a lot of pivoting and adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic and doing things online as well as meeting people in person. It was adopted by the County Council in May of 2021 after public hearings at the County Council as well as at the Planning Advisory Board. Now, through all the public engagement that we heard through those years, 3 big key themes emerged from what people want to see for the future of the county. And those are that we should grow smarter, greener, and more equitable. And we say smarter would mean realizing the goals of smart growth, where we put growth where there is infrastructure, where people can live near employment opportunities, near transportation options, and that we grow greener, that we conserve our open spaces, our natural areas, our rural areas of the county, and that we grow more equitable, that no matter where you live in the county, you have access to transportation, to jobs, to good schools, that every neighborhood is a thriving neighborhood in the county. Now, we're implementing Plan 2040 through actions on more than 400 strategies. They include investments in public infrastructure, changes to policy and county code, and by implementing 9 region plans. You can see all this information about Plan 2040, including this annual report, at the website listed there, aecounty.org/plan2040. Now, the plan includes a number of the annual report includes a number of key performance indicators, and I'll give you a quick overview of those to give you some context and some high-level statistics before our panel talks about some more of the stories behind the numbers. First of all, this first graph kind of shares us the overall progress on implementation. There's 3 bar charts show the number of strategies in short term, midterm, and long term, and kind of what percentage of them have been either completed, which would be in blue, in progress in green, or not yet started in yellow. Overall, all the strategies combined, we're at about 86% of them are either completed or in progress. And as you can see, that number is even higher in the short term. Now, when and by short term, I mean 0 to 5 years, midterm 5 to 10, long term 10 to 20. And this is great progress, but also not entirely surprising for the staff that were involved in developing the plan, because we had a lot of engagement between the Office of Planning and Zoning and our other departments, like you'll see representatives of tonight. So in addition to engaging with the public, we engaged with different departments to understand their work plans, their work programs, what challenges they were facing, where they were expecting to be able to grow and improve public services. So we really integrated that all together. So when we adopted the plan, these departments were ready and to just jump right into implementation. Now, let me share some of those key performance indicators. I'll pick one per chapter. I'll show a few on the slide just for a teaser for you to hopefully look at the report in more depth. For the natural environment, one thing we always get access about is how much land has the county conserved. And we've got multiple programs that we do that in. I'll highlight this number at the top, that in 2024, we preserved 233 acres of working farms and forests through our agricultural and woodland preservation program. That cumulatively, over time, has conserved over 14,616 acres of working farms and forests in the county. Thinking also of another aspect of open space preservation, we adopted a green infrastructure master plan a couple of years ago, and that mapped out where the largest connected green spaces are in the county. And that's the map that's shown here on the right. So this is a map of Arundel County. Annapolis is in gray over here, the Chesapeake Bay off to the right side, and the Patuxent River on the left side. And you can see the Patuxent Refuge sticks out there on the left corner as being one of our largest green spaces in the county. In 2024, we conserved over 430 acres of land within this green infrastructure network. And when we look back in that plan, we set two key goals: that we would conserve 5,000 more acres of land in the county by 2030, and that we would conserve 30% of the county within this green infrastructure network by 2030. Since 2020, our baseline year for this, we've conserved over 1,700 acres of land, and we have met already that goal of conserving 30% of the county within this network by 2030. Switching from the natural environment to the built environment, a question that we often get from public is, what's going on with development? Where's development happening? How much is happening? And we track that and report that in this plan, in this annual report. What's been interesting in 2024 is, in terms of residential building permits, it's kind of been a complicated picture. There were 963 residential building permits approved in 2024. Now, that's actually significantly lower than the number of permits that have been issued in the last, let's say, decade. From 2010 to 2020, that typical number was about 2,000 to 3,000 building permits per year. So those last couple of years have actually been significantly lower. Some who are attending tonight might applaud that, saying, hey, that's slower growth and we want that. But with our affordability, housing affordability crisis, that's also a challenge. It's noteworthy, and I think Ms. Karpowitz will talk later on in this program about there's a significant number of affordable housing projects that are being developed. So a significant number of these permits were issued for properties that are going to be dedicated for affordable housing. In addition to the pure number of how many permits are issued, it's really important where they're issued. And it's positive to note that almost half of these residential building permits were issued for areas that are identified as targeted development and redevelopment areas in Plan 2040. So those are our town centers like Parole, Odenton, and Glen Burnie, as well as near our major economic centers like BWI Airport and Fort Meade. So that's that smart growth, trying to have more of that development happening in close proximity to places where people can work, and where we're developing that more intense infrastructure that can support more compact, walkable communities. Switching from the built environment to thinking about healthy communities, there's a lot of ways to measure community health and a lot of services that the county provides to our communities. I'll point out one here in particular that's had a dramatic change in the last couple of years, and that's the number of schools that are at or above their state-rated capacity. This actually has a very formal definition in school planning. Every time there's a school building built, the state and the Board of Education identify, what is the classroom space, what is the capacity that can hold. And back in 2022, there were 31 schools at or above that capacity. We've dropped that down to 9 now, and that's largely in part because of construction of new schools, including the Severn Run High School, Two Rivers Elementary, and the redistricting that the Board of Education has taken on in the northern half of the county. That redistricting the northern half, when that was completed and adopted by the Board of Education, that dropped it down to 0 schools in that portion of the county being up at or above capacity. Redistricting for the southern part of the county is currently ongoing, and they've been accepting public comments on that, the Board of Education, and that southern redistricting is scheduled to be completed by the end of this year, and hopefully this number will come down even further when that's adopted. That's always a difficult task, but one that's really important for maintaining our school districts. On the economy, of course, there's a lot of metrics for measuring the health of the economy, and there's been a lot of turbulence in the economy in 2025. This report looks back to 2024, and at the end of the year, we were on really sound foundation. Unemployment had continued to be low. It's been low for the last several years, below 3% through 2024. And importantly, for the land use perspective, our vacancy rates, so the percentage of commercial real estate, offices, shopping centers, industrial space, that vacancy rate has been a strong number, which is a relatively low number. Typically, it's been between 3% up to 8.5%, depending on the type of commercial real estate. Now, there was a lot of concern when the pandemic hit, and of course, everybody started working from home, and we weren't able to go out and visit all these stores. And there were a lot of declines, or I should say increases in vacancy rates in commercial real estate space, especially in our urban centers like in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. and the downtown cores. But throughout all that, Arundel County has stayed very strong. There are always pockets and places in the county where there are some empty storefronts where we want to see redevelopment, but across the county, that market has stayed quite strong. So with that quick overview, I'm going to pass it back to Vincent to move us on to the panel discussion.
All right, thank you, Michael, for that quick overview. And I'm actually going to pass it over to the county executive. But before I do that, I just wanted to give a quick reminder that the panel discussion will be comprised of questions that the county executive pulled from those who submitted questions through the registration process. And he also has some questions that he's curious about too. But as you are listening, you're probably going to have questions of your own, and I do encourage you to submit those through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We do want to hear from you. I'm going to try to get to a couple of those. And so with that, County Executive Pittman, please take it away.
All right. Thanks, Vincent. And thanks, Michael. That was a really, really good overview of what we're trying to do in Plan 2040 and what we've done in the last year. And some of those numbers, keep in mind, are just 1 year. So there might be a year where very little of something happens, and then in the next year, a whole lot of it happens. But I'm really glad that this is happening, that people are interested in following up on the implementation of a plan, because historically plans get done, they get put on a shelf, and now they're online so everybody can see them, which is great, but often they collect a lot of dust, and that's not really how we want things to go in the county. I'll also say that so much of what we do in the county is implementation of Plan 2040, because it really does guide us in our budget. It guides us when we're doing parks. It guides us on development policy, but it guides us in a lot of areas. And so every single day, something is being accomplished that's related to Plan 2040, and we're always referring back to the document when something is questionable, controversial. You'll hear it before the council. If there's a bill in front of them, you'll often hear, well, this was part of the plan for Plan 2040. This is, in fact, it was on this page, and now we're implementing it. So it makes it a little harder for people to oppose things. It's not in stone, obviously. The council has the ultimate authority on legislation, on budgets, and things evolve. But so thank you all for joining us. But we have a really cool panel of folks who are very involved in implementing Plan 2040. And let me introduce each of you one at a time. I'll say your name and who you are, and then you jump in and let us know what it is that you do that's related to Plan 2040 or that your department does. And I'll go from the top of the screen with Erica Matthews, Deputy Director of Recreation and Parks.
Good evening. Again, I'm Erica Matthews, Deputy Director for Recreation and Parks. The Department of Recreation and Parks is sometimes known as the Department of Fun. And in this instance, our function is to sort of help bring a lot of what Plan 2040 is to life. We're sort of an implementation agency and trying to get stuff off the ground. I think the one thing that I'm most proud of in Plan 2040, and I think you sort of touched on it, is how it's all integrated. So Plan 2040 ties to the Green Infrastructure Plan, ties to the LPPRP, ties to the region plans. So then we're all moving in a consistent fashion, and that these plans, hopefully will outlive us and our efforts, but it keeps us on a consistent path moving forward.
And I am going to show off a little and say that I finally learned what LPPRP means. It's Land Preservation, Parks and Recreation Plan. So y'all do your own plan. You have a lot of community engagement on that, and that feeds into this plan. So.
Correct.
All right, thanks. Thanks. We have Aaron Karpowitz here, who's does the housing work for the county, particularly the affordable housing work. And so I'm really glad that you're here because this is ACDS, Arundel Community Development Services Director.
Hi, great, thanks. Great to be here. As the county executive said, I lead Arundel Community Development Services. ACDS is the county's nonprofit housing and community development arm. County doesn't have a separate housing and community development agency. We're a little bit unique in that we were privatized about 30 years ago as a nonprofit, but we're quasi-governmental, and we administer a lot of housing and community development funds on behalf of the county. We also administer some programs. We partner with over 130 subrecipients to carry out housing and community development activities. And we provide a lot of low interest loans and zero interest loans to developers who are creating affordable housing units and affordable housing opportunities that really serve our county's low and moderate income working and older households, as well as households with disabilities and other special needs. And so in terms of Plan 2040, a couple things that we do is we administer the Housing Trust Fund, which was identified as a goal. We also are helping the county with implementing zoning provisions such as workforce housing zoning provisions and the Moderately Priced Dwelling Unit or Housing Attainability Act programming. So it's an exciting job. It's a big job because the housing needs in the county, like the rest of the nation, are really great. But we have some great tools, and it's been great working with this administration to help implement a lot of those tools.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. And you may have noticed that there was a shoulder in the same frame, and now there's a face. So we've had some technical difficulties getting this set up. First it was me, then it was Lynn. Anyway, Lynn and Aaron. Lynn is Office of Planning and Zoning, and Lynn is often the person that you see in front of the county council when there's legislation, and often that legislation is part of implementation. But the whole department does a whole lot related to this. So let us know what it is, Lynn.
Exactly. And thank you to Erin for sharing her office with me. Yeah, I'm the Assistant Planning and Zoning Officer in Planning and Zoning. And our office is really, with regard to Plan 2040, our office is responsible for the whole thing from start to finish, the entire process. We start by developing a scope of work for the plan to make sure that it addresses all of the state required elements and the state visions that are mandated to be included in a local comp plan. We identify all of the research and the data analysis and mapping analysis that's needed, which is a lot. We put together staff teams of not only planning and zoning staff, but staff from almost every county agency who works with us on this very large effort. We develop a public engagement or community outreach program to solicit input from everybody in the county. We also formed a citizen advisory committee that worked very closely with us during that planning process. After we get through all that, we're responsible for actually drafting the plan, for presenting it to the Planning Advisory Board, and then after that, presenting it to the County Council for actual adoption. Once we get that far, we submit both our draft plan and our final plan to the Maryland Department of Planning for their review and comment to make sure it's consistent with state requirements. And finally, we're also responsible for taking the lead on tracking implementation of the plan. And as you all have said, virtually every county agency is involved in implementation. The Planning and Zoning Office tracks that and prepares an annual status report on implementation of Plan 2040 that's available to the public as well. So all of that generally is, between a 2 and 3 year process.
And I will even add to that, that's a lot of that is the long-range planning team who are amazing. You
Yes.
work on legislation, but you also do development review. So to enforce the law when there's applications.
Right, exactly. Legislation and development review is a big part of implementing Plan 2040 and its strategies.
Yep. Well, it's an amazing team over there. And then finally, we have Sam Sneed here, who's the director of the Office of Transportation, OOT, we like to call it. Tell us what you do. I think we can guess, but
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, everyone else. Um, as a director of transportation, we work on two different elements. One is our transit operations, and the other is our plan development and implementation. And on the implementation side, we work well with Department of Public Works, but we also work with Erica Matthews and other departments that are involved with infrastructure. Sometimes we'll have crossover with Aaron as well on housing projects, making sure that transportation infrastructure is there. The big plans that we have in place, and as Stuart said, we don't like to keep them on the shelf, are the bike ped plan, the 5-year transit development plan, our move and Arundel plan, which is a long-term plan. And then we have developed a few more. One is our ZEB implementation plan. That's where we're shifting from reliance on gas-powered buses to hybrid and electric buses. We're just wrapping up the implementation study for that. We also have a ferry study that we worked on regionally, and these are all tied to other projects. Like, for example, we have a Safe Routes to Transit grant that we won through FHWA, and that's allowing us to plan out and implement capital projects to improve sidewalks and trails to get to transit and access transit. And all these plans and projects feed into Plan 2040. So once we have the plan established, what we can do is use that to justify projects so that we can better serve the public and provide better connectivity for the communities, which is one of the major milestone pieces in this plan.
and I will just say that there are many who say that they are fine with growth, fine with development, as long as it doesn't create traffic. So what you do is facilitates all the rest of it. So let me do this. Let me, I want to make sure that I get my question in first. Isn't that rude of me? I think it's rude, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I think maybe this question will lead to other questions that people will ask. And it's a different question for each of you. And you know, some of them are kind of specific. I hope I don't stump you too badly. Why don't we start with you, Sam, since you're already on? And I hear a lot about Riva Road because we've got a lot of housing units going in, multifamily housing units, and people are shocked by it. And they say there's a traffic problem, and how could you do that when there is traffic? And I know there've been some things done, and there are some things in the works as well to address that. So what's going on Riva Road? And you can also say in general how how you approach moving people rather than moving cars, I know, in a situation like that.
That's a great question, Stuart. And because we work on Riva Road, we've seen the development come in the past few years and seen the difference it's made in the increased congestion in the area. So it's more of a three-pronged approach. One of the modes that is being addressed very well is the PED access mode. So we have very wide sidewalks along the alignment, which provides pedestrians with easy access to the residential area locations, as well as the government buildings and the commercial locations. And then there's a network of paths within a lot of those developments. So that PED piece is definitely there. But when speaking
can I just say that it's there in parts of it, like the new apartments that are a little further south. There's a great big wide sidewalk, and I know we're working on widening the sidewalk for the next section, and then it gets wider. It's narrow, and then it gets wider again. And then I think some people also don't understand that there's a new path now that gets people under Route 50 so they can get to the mall, correct?
Yes, and there's also a tie into other modes as well. As you know, the Pearl Transit Center will be located there, and that'll be a major hub, not only for the active MTA commuter bus lines that go to DC, but also a hub for our buses, for City of Annapolis buses, then any future partnerships we obtain for perhaps long road, on-road buses. And there is potential for some relief roads in the area and some safety improvements. We've identified that area through our Vision Zero plan to make some safety improvements to access the sites just near that interchange in a more safe way, so there aren't as many collisions.
As in left turn on River Road, right?
Yes, taking that left turn onto the on-ramp, I know that it's caused a lot of confusion, and we've implemented some safety measures, but DPW is also implementing several more to prevent some illegal cutoffs in that area as well.
And then I saw some data. I know you're not the traffic control guy that does the lights and all of that DPW Roads does, but they put in some high tech timing devices that actually adjust to the traffic. And I saw some amazing data that a huge decrease in how long it takes, even during rush hour when school's getting out and high school and all of that, people getting out of the Board of Education. And that data was great. I mean, the traffic is moving now faster than it's ever moved. So there's less of a problem now.
Yes, and those boxes also queue up to our emergency services vehicles as well. And we run some tests to run transit priority as well. So buses can also be prioritized. Of course, in the hierarchy of it all, emergencies first, and then transit is below that. But those priority signals allow traffic to move faster.
And then do you want to say anything about how we work with the City of Annapolis on getting people, we would love, obviously, for people who live there to be able to get in all the way to City Dock, maybe even on something really exciting, right?
So yes, we actually worked on a regional ferry consortium. They completed a study, and we applied.
I was thinking trolley, but
oh, okay, yeah. So right now, a few of our staff are on site in Portland as part of a streetcar trolley consortium, and they're learning a lot about that particular mode of transit. There is potential for a feasibility study for streetcar to run between City Dock and Parole. And we're really excited about that feasibility study coming to fruition. It has a lot of potential, and it could tie into a future ferry as well.
So there's transit now that goes there, but there's evidence that more people ride it when it's a trolley. So
yeah, the number one reason why people utilize transit is reliability, and streetcars and trolleys offer that fixed infrastructure that give people that sense of reliability.
Right. So, and of course, there's a whole plan for Parole Town Center that OPC does, as well as all of this. And it was designed to be a high density community where people could live, work, play, and that's what I think it's turning into, I hope. Okay. Aaron, can you tell us, we created this thing called the Housing Trust Fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's actually about, it was about $7.5 million a year automatically from the sales of properties above $1 million in the county. And from the real estate transfer tax, we did a little bit of an increase in it for this. And it's now growing. It's actually, as the market's coming back, we're hearing maybe it's 10 million. So tell us what we do with it and what difference it's making.
Sure. Yeah, that's one of the most exciting things we do is act as stewards of this great resource. And we've had about 25 million allocated in the last 3 years. We haven't spent all that because, as you know, development can take a long time, right? So, some of them are multi-year projects. Just a few things that we have done, I'll highlight, and then I'm going to land on rental housing production, because that's one of our biggest needs in the county. So just, a couple things. creating affordable homeownership opportunities for our working families and moderate income families and households. We've created some funding to provide down payment and closing cost assistance for households earning 100% area median income and below, because we know housing prices, the median home price now is about $517,000 in Anne Arundel County, which is pretty big compared to our other jurisdictions in the region. We also are creating some affordable homeownership units through partnering with Habitat for Humanity. And my agency, Arundel Community Development Services, also acts as a developer. So we're developing about 20 affordable units for homeowners in the Glen Burnie area. So that'll be great when that gets fully developed. And then also we're creating some opportunities through our moving home program. We're providing tenant-based vouchers for people who are exiting homelessness. It's a temporary program while they get on their feet. And about 80% of the people that have graduated from that program, in addition to getting the housing, they're getting counseling and case management. And 80% of those clients have been able to increase their income or maintain their employment, so they're remain stably housed. So I'm really excited about that. And we're also creating transitional housing for people who might have special needs. And then finally, as I said, rental housing production. In the last 3 years, we've dedicated about $16 million to either preserve existing units or create new units. And we've expended or committed about 15 of that 16 million so far on real projects. In fiscal year 24, we closed on 7 multifamily projects alone, which was about, I think it was about 424 new units and a few hundred existing units. Plus, we also provided some county pilot resources to preserve additional units. So all in all, if you look at all the resources we spent and committed in 24, that was to preserve and create over 1,600 units that are restricted for people who are earning 60% of area median income. And for those of you who don't know that number off the top of your head, that's about 60, that's a household of 3. For a household of 3, that would be people who are earning about $66,000 a year. That's our educational support workers, it's our social service workers, construction workers. And just to compare that, if you want to compare that to previous years, before we had this special resource, we would, maybe do 1 project every year, maybe 1 project every 2 years. So if you look at the 5-year period that ended in 2020, we preserved or created just 362 units. And similarly, if you look at the 5-year period that ended in 2015, in the county, we either created or preserved just 579 units. So I think this is an amazing resource, and we're going to keep leveraging it. And we leverage private and state funds, federal funds. So it's a great resource.
Yeah. And I hear we're going to have, because we had in 24, we had so many deals close in this year, we're going to have a lot of ribbon cuttings, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We just had one. Yeah. Well, more to come.
Yeah. And hearing from the people who live there is just, it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. Great stories out there.
Yeah. With their families and happy.
Yeah. And I have some great stories from the people who were in the moving home program too, if anyone wants to hear them in the future. So.
Great. And well, we could do this in another question if we want, but you're working on a new plan that is a federal requirement. But let's jump to Erica, Rec and Parks. So the data tells us that we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I think $100 million in either new parks or improvements to parks in the capital budget. Can you just tell people, not necessarily what's funded this year, but what is some of the things that you think are most exciting that are in the pipeline that are coming soon?
So I jokingly say we're the Department of Fun, but thanks to you and the County Council, we should be called the Department of Construction. We have a ton of stuff right now that's in construction, and I don't want to steal your thunder from your speech tomorrow, but upcoming, we do have 2 more community parks that'll be developed and starting construction this year. That'll be the Millersville Community Park and the Odenton Community Park. We're also planning a new regional park in the Marley area, which gives the folks up in that part of the county a regional park. We don't have one there. It's sort of focused on a sort of a mix of community mixed with conservation, which sort of finds this happy medium when you're developing in a neighborhood. And then we're also currently working on an expansion to the Severn Danza Park. That's sort of our catch-all park. We just got those 30 acres and that planning is started. The best way to sort of communicate with the department and get a feel for what's going on is we have a newsletter that goes out every week. So in the newsletter, there's a Capital Corner. We have a web page with all of our capital projects. Even if we're not in a formal meeting period, people can always email us to ask us questions and we'll respond pretty rapidly. More formally, I do encourage people to participate in the LPPRP, which is our long range master plan. And that's going to start next summer. So you be on the lookout. We put signs up, we advertise it, there's a plan. We've started doing a lot more surveys and QR codes. If you ride around and you see future home of, and there's a big QR code, hit that QR code. There's information about the project. There's an update. We may be seeking stakeholders to participate. There may be a survey where we're just studying a property to get smarter. So we do encourage the public to engage in this process.
And I will just add that it's a huge variety of things, and it always reflects what's in the LPPRP, which is what people say we need. So they'll say whether we need more ball fields or even what kind of ball fields. They'll say whether we need more hiking paths. Well, they'll say whether we need more indoor recreation. And it's a pretty neat menu of stuff that's coming. I mean, there's the Edgewater Rec Center indoor, which the old giant that is one.
Yep.
Coming, and then there's the Deal Park, which is one that we started, I think, my first year. Finally,
yes,
we got a ribbon coming up.
Yep, so we're super close to completing that one in Tanyard Springs. The Edgewater Community Center is going to be exciting. We've partnered with the Resilience Authority on that. So this will be one of a kind for this county. We just released the RFP. So if people are interested in working with the county, that RFP is out there. Again, information on all these projects are posted on our website.
And we got a lot of ball fields coming. Millersville's got that. We've got some land acquisitions that people will be hearing about soon, I hope.
Yes.
And, hey, tell us what's going on at Jug Bay.
Jug Bay.
So this Jug Bay, the camping thing.
Yes, so that's the first in the county's sort of recreational program. We try to hit on a lot of different ideas, opportunities, because one person's jam may not be another. So the county is actually building cabins so that folks can spend the night in Jug Bay. And then there's also a sort of primitive camping area. So this is the first in our system. We hope to have those opened up this fall, is the schedule that I have from DPW. And it's also the 40-year anniversary of Jug Bay. So there are a lot of cool events that are planned around that property as well.
Yeah, I've been threatening a staff retreat in the primitive camping, and I think I've got some of my staff freaked out about sleeping under the stars and mosquitoes.
Yeah, I think we've all agreed that we prefer to stay in the cabins. I think that's where the team has landed.
We'll negotiate. Okay. Great, exciting stuff. Let's keep moving. So, Lynn, you get to work on lots of legislative things, and we hear about that through the council, but you also get to actually, I think, get involved in some real redevelopment of communities. That is, I hope you're excited by. I know you are. I'm excited, but particularly tell us what's going on. Glen Burnie and the B&A Boulevard heading up to the train station, the end of the light rail, Cromwell, and everything in between, 7409. What's going on up there, and what's the goal?
Sure. The goal is a more vibrant and exciting Glen Burnie Town Center and surrounding environs, as well as increased ridership of the Cromwell Transit Station to get a better return on public investment. So there's a few key opportunity sites up there where redevelopment plans are in the works. One is at 7409 B&A Boulevard. This is a county-owned property all under one ownership, which hopefully will make it a little easier in terms of redevelopment. It's a large, over 30-acre site. About half of it is floodplain area, but there's a good 13 or 14 acres that are ripe for redevelopment. And historically, it was used at one point by the county public works department. I think it's been used by the police department and various entities, always sort of industrial type uses. But given its location right there in the town center and within walking distance to the Cromwell station, we've always considered it sort of an underutilized property. So a while back, the county put out a request for proposals seeking developers interested in redevelopment. At this time, we have selected a developer. The contract is still under negotiation, so I can't say a lot about the details, but it is close to final negotiations. And my understanding is that there's going to be a community meeting sometime, I think in May, to share some of the ideas from the selected developer with the public. But in general, we're hoping to get some housing, including hopefully some affordable housing, maybe a mix of owner occupied and rental housing, some public green space, and hopefully a lot of new residents that could take advantage of all the town center has to offer. And then right up the road at the Cromwell light rail station, both the county and state are partnering to try to promote redevelopment of that site, potentially both the east side of the road, which is the Cromwell Shopping Center, as well as the west side, which includes the train station and tracks, and also a privately owned light industrial area that has some flex space type uses on it. So a few things have happened. MDOT and Medco recently partnered to do sort of a market analysis and maybe a SWOT analysis, assessing opportunities and challenges to redeveloping several of the transit stations within the Baltimore core area. And the Cromwell station was one of them. And the conclusion was that it has a lot of pluses. It has good acreage, good access, road access. One of the downsides they felt was that being commercially and industrial zoned, it's not really zoned for the type of TOD development that's desired. Luckily, that is probably being addressed as we speak, because our Region 3 comprehensive zoning legislation is before the council right now, and it hasn't been adopted yet, but as it stands now, much of that area is likely to be rezoned to mixed use, which would support the type of TOD development they're interested in. Additionally, Sam's Office of Transportation, recently completed a TOD feasibility study where they looked at several transit stations in the county. I think there were a few MARC stations, a couple of light rail stations, Parole, but Cromwell was also one of those. And so that plan has not been released for public review yet, but I think it will be soon. And it includes some input that was gained through some stakeholder workshops last year. And it also presents a sort of vision plan for how the Cromwell site could be redeveloped, which is, it's not the same as an actual development proposal, but it's a vision plan that shows how the area could be redeveloped to include multifamily, maybe retail, maybe a hotel, maybe some senior independent living, lots of green space, etc. So those two projects, if either one or both of them can be brought to fruition, I think that would be just a huge catalyst for the Glen Burnie Town Center and greater Glen Burnie, and would really improve the economic vitality of the area.
Yeah, there's no question that the businesses up there, mostly small businesses, have been struggling and saying, we don't have enough people here. We need a little bit of redevelopment to do that. And it's crazy next to transit to have industrial warehouses, all those sorts of things. And so
Right.
It's pretty exciting to see that this governor is very committed to doing that, and the Department of Housing Committee and the state are committed to it. And we were trying to get that TOD designation for years before, and now we finally have a partner. So, and I know that the council member in District 1 there and in District 2 right below both serve that area are working on making that happen. So
Absolutely.
yeah, exciting stuff. And actually, getting now to some of the questions that people have been, there's some that are in a chat here, and then some that came in when people registered. One of them was exactly, you just answered it, which is what progress has been made on the Plan 2040 and Move Anne Arundel goals to create places where people can live, work, and play without daily use of a car. And that absolutely could happen at those sites. So particularly if they work in Baltimore City. So anyway, let's see here. We've got questions from folks who are pretty sophisticated here. Some of them are curveballs. Let's see. Here's one very specific one, but I like the I like the what this person is getting at. Will the county consider partnering with other stakeholders, for instance, SHA, Fort Meade, Garrison, to install a bus shelter at Annapolis Road between Disney and Rockenbach for residents such as nearby Food Line employees commuting to work? You love requests like that, don't you, Sam?
Yeah, we'd like to accommodate requests for bus shelters. There was actually a comprehensive study done by our regional transportation entity for the entire Baltimore region. And then our department applied for a grant, and it's called Safe Routes to Transit as a study. We did a lot of public outreach as of recent, and we prioritized bus shelter implementation, and we've used a combination of county funds as well as AARP grant funds to implement several shelters over the past couple of years. So we definitely will take that request and take that location under consideration. We typically have a gradient for shelters. In really high use locations, we'll have a more high-end shelter that'll cost $15,000 to $20,000. That'll have cover overhead, charging capability for your phone, solar lighting, a bench, and trash receptacles. And then we'll have a lower gradient, which is usually a bus stop sign and a bench for people to sit. So it'll really depend on what kind of ridership that location's getting, the type of shelter we implement.
All right. Good stuff. Yeah. If people are asking for the shelters, that means that they're using the system. And I know it's been great getting some of those up. I will also note that we're I mean, we've increased ridership more than doubled since pre-COVID, right?
Yes.
On our systems. And I'll also mention the light rail, since we were just talking about it. The state is about to invest major money. It's going to be all new trains, and it's going to be really nice. So there's hopefully build it and they will come, right? But they're already coming in Anne Arundel County and using it. So okay, here's one that's kind of long, and I'm going to read the whole thing, and then you guys can take any piece of it you want. I have a feeling, Aaron, you're going to want to jump in on this one though. Considering U.S. trade policies and shifting global order, how Anne Arundel County and District 3 in particular address the challenges posed by housing affordability and supply shortages. And then also he says, how's Anne Arundel County have affordable housing developers and the building trades unions collaborated to leverage their expertise in construction and workforce development? What building supplies, resources, and expertise should we leverage? And why has apartment rents in Anne Arundel County not decreased due to increasing unemployment caused by the federal government employees? Which I would translate that into, if things get worse, will they? Will the market help? And I guess any innovative things that you're doing, with builders to try to diversify housing stock. And yeah.
Sure. So just that is a lot in there, but I'll just take the last part first. Yeah, we don't really know what the impact. We haven't seen the impact on housing prices and rents in terms of employment. My understanding is the economy is still relatively strong in our county. And but even prior to now, with changes in federal workforce, we have seen the preliminary data and just talking anecdotally to some of the industry experts who do market analysis for our developers is that rent prices are softening compared to how they were post-COVID. We know that rents were hot. Now, it might not feel like that if you're a renter who has seen your rent go up 5% every year for the last few years. But overall, I do think that it's softening a little bit. And so we'll see, that remains to be seen, but we're going to continue to try to produce affordable units that have income or rents that are restricted, so affordable, so they remain affordable. But in terms of, partnering with workforce development, that's a great point. We do that anyway. That's been a federal requirement for our federal funds. We try to get local workforce involved in the projects, and we work with our developers who then have general contractors that they work with. And we have requirements when they're using federal funds, and we've transferred that same requirement over to the use of county funds. We think it's a pretty good regulation and a good policy to try to involve local workforce. So we often work with Kirk Murray and his team at Arundel Workforce Development. One example is the Severn Center. We did a hiring fair with them to try to hire people when we were developing that project. So we'll continue to do that. I don't have a good answer, David, to the question that you had about the building industries. We do know our developers and contractors are concerned about the rising cost, as well as, interest rates have been higher than they were for the last 5 years. And so, that's something, we think about in terms of the timing, in terms of projects, and just that's why it's important to move projects through as fast as possible so that, we don't get caught up in supply chain issues. But we'll have to explore that with the building trades industry and look at other ways that we can innovate on that front. Excellent.
Excellent. So here's one that is more planning related, but it's also it's housing again. I don't know if I'm supposed to be reading the names of the people asking the questions or not, but I think you might be able to guess on this one. It's Linda Bonner, who's a housing advocate for ACT and Arundel Connecting Together. And I have heard her ask this question of me and others, but I'm going to ask it of you, Lynn. When the regions, the stakeholder advisory committees that are doing their region plans, and that is underway, the question is, do they have housing target goals for affordable housing? Or do they even talk about affordable housing? Are they required to talk about affordable housing?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure if they're required to or not, but they definitely all seem to be talking about affordable housing in every region. So it is one of the hot topics of the day. I do know that each plan presents sort of what we call a development holding capacity analysis for their region. So that tells you based on how land is zoned now, and what its development capacity is. It tells you how many more units could be developed under current zoning as compared to what our household forecast showed that there's a need. So that helps the planners working on each region plan identify what the gap is and how many more housing units we might need to try to plan and prepare for, whether through comprehensive zoning or through other mechanisms. I don't know if those plans present like a specific target number for how many affordable housing units, but they do speak to the holding capacity as well as what that gap is, and which tells us how much more housing we should be striving to accommodate using any of the mechanisms that we can, whether it's zoning, whether it's the Housing Trust Fund, whether it's legislation like was passed last year to reform our mixed use zones or to promote redevelopment. These myriad different ways that we have to try to expand capacity for housing.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. That's not. There's no requirement to have a number, But I don't know if Michael, I know Vincent is probably noticing that it just hit 7 o'clock and he's wishing that I would stop asking questions and talking because we were supposed to end at 7. But Michael, if you have anything to add on the process, I know that it's always on the agenda for all the region plans when they do it. Any more you want to add to that, how that works?
Lynn covered it well. But yes, each of the regions, we do have a series of kind of topical meetings and discussions they dive deep into. We give them briefing papers and resources to understand what the current conditions are and demand. And as Lynn mentioned, we do a lot of discussion about, what's that capacity? How much land is available at the current zoning? How much could be developed? And what are we forecasting when we look at the demographics of the region? And we bring in Erin and her team to talk particularly about affordable housing in each of the communities. And a lot of the discussions really tailored on what's the appropriate scale. I think we've heard in those stakeholder advisory committee discussions a lot of openness and recognition of the challenge of affordability and of wanting to have a more inclusive community where their kids and grandkids can live there, and where the school teachers and other folks, everyone can afford to live there. And then the conversations often go to what's the scale, so that led to a lot of discussions around things like missing middle housing, of can we have more diverse housing types so it's not just a lot of either townhomes, apartments, or single family detached. And that's helped lead up to the legislation that was part of the Housing Attainability Act that was passed last year that included reforms to our code to allow more diverse types of housing like quadplexes and triplexes that traditionally were built before we had our modern zoning codes. But our requirements had limited the potential for that. So
yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that that's happening. And who knows, at the state level, at some point, they may say, y'all need to come up with a plan to produce X number of units. And what we hope is that we get to do our own plan, and that we get to engage our own residents so that it's something that's publicly supported. So I keep on going. We could go on and on and on and on, but I am going to have to turn it back over to Vincent before he jumps in and turns off the mic. But thank you all. We really could go on forever. There's so much great stuff going on. And we're so lucky that I would say we're lucky that we've had a good run economically. I hope that continues. Recent news suggests that maybe it's going to slow down quite a bit. But we have been able to implement more in Plan 2040, I think, partly because we've had the funds to do the capital projects. But we've also had the political will on this county council to do it. And I think we've made great progress, and I hope it continues for a long time. So thank you all.
All right. So thank you, County Executive Pittman. And so thank you to Michael for that overview of the Plan 2040 Progress Report. Thank you to all of our panelists, Erica, Aaron, Lynn, Sam, for participating. And thank you to the County Executive for moderating the panel tonight. And thank you to all of you for coming tonight and learning more about what we're doing in Plan 2040 land. Please keep an eye out in your inbox for all these materials for the webinar, including a survey where you can tell us about tonight's survey and you can be totally honest, right? You can tell us what you think. Just so everyone knows, we will be taking a break from the Engage Arundel webinars just to focus on the Community Association Summit, which will be taking place on Saturday, May 10th at the Arundel County Community College Health and Sciences Building from 11 to 5 p.m. This is a great opportunity for community leaders to learn effective communication skills, how to engage with county government, stormwater management success, and to gain clarity on reserve studies. So I hope to see you there. You can register by visiting aacounty.org/CA Summit, and we'll also be taking a break throughout the summer. But that's why it's important that when that survey comes in, that you complete it. A portion of that will allow you to tell us what you want to see when you come back. What types of Engage Arundel webinars do you want to see? So with that, I will say good night and continue to engage, Arundel. Good night.
Right. Remember, our transit's free. Ride it.